Okay, there we are. Namaste. Greetings, everyone here and wherever you may be. So, today I thought we will. Our topic was that how easily we can be distracted. And distracted. Yeah, so easily. And yet we all know at some level, well, we all know at all levels, that our brightest future hinges on being present, paying attention to the moment. But yet how easily we sway and lose that focus. So just through experimenting and experiencing, how does that work? And what does time mean? What does present moment really even mean? When we say now or be in the moment, what does that mean? What is the past and what is the future? How does that work? So at early stages in my life, I didn't have the words then, but I would experience this presence that's always there. So in that, of course, things are happening, that deep space behind things and just the presence. So which was confirmed very lately again in Nanaimo. My friend took me to this beautiful, it's the eighth wonder of Canada. It's the Cathedral Grove, and it's just wooded area, beautiful, hundreds of years old trees. So like that big, as big as the house, bigger. Yeah. So very, very interesting. So they don't remove those trees that fall. So the big trunks, and I took lots of pictures because there's this whole sense. It's not just sensation, it's just sense of something so much bigger and so ancient. Wood has that. So these big trees, like tall, I don't know how many feet, and just fallen. And you could see they were not really, they were there. And then you had the new leaves and the new trees. And then there was these leaves being crushed and branches being crushed and going into the ground, and then the new. So you could actually, in one glance, just one look, you could see your past, present, future. You could see it in that wooded area, that how does this all work? Everything's together. But nothing was dead. Even the trees that had fallen were not dead because they still had life. You could touch them, you could feel them. I recorded a great meditation there. And so, when we think of life and we say it's eternity, it's eternal, it truly is. Because nothing is ever dead. So death is not the opposite of life, basically. Life just is eternal. And yes, formations change and things change, but it's just ever pervading. And that wooded region it's a heritage site, was one of the best experiences of timelessness, which we can experience in ourselves, but seldom. Because we're always experiencing ourselves through time. And time is thought. It's always, whenever you actually have movement of thought, you become restricted to time. But if you don't have the movement of thought, okay, or if you have developed the gift or the skill to also experience what is behind the movement of thought and the movement of thought together. Right? So you can experience, you can have the thought movement, and yet you can experience the presence, that stillness behind. Then it's a whole different dynamics, right? Meditators have tried to, sages have tried to take us there. So timelessness is not just locked up in some container. It is life. It is. And then there's also time. So if you look at your photograph or your image of something 5 years ago and then 5 years later, yes, experience, you can see how you experienced life or time, it changes, right? So nobody can take that away, and we need to do things in time, and it's 5 o'clock or whatever. But another thing that would always be very intriguing, that how is it that it's 13th here and 14th in India? Like, how does that get created? How does, in one country you've got this, and. But anyway, so we come back to timelessness. Now, if you look at the nature of the mind, and this is where distraction, I always thought distraction was something negative. That, and we are very easily distracted because our senses are quite heightened. All 5 senses now, especially now, are really stimulated because of whether our food, whether our media, and whether we've just evolved that we've got a different sense perception. They're all heightened, right? When your senses are so heightened, and so you're being bombarded with information and images, right? And different thought form all the time, how does that work? And then how do you not get distracted by that? Because they do distract you at some level too, right? So just experimenting further and more with this, I realized that it didn't matter that what I was thinking. It didn't matter whether I was thinking from the past memory or whether I was imagining something from the future. It didn't matter, right? That. But as long as I could think with this presence, I was aware of the presence, then I was actually in the now, in the moment, always. Because the timelessness was, I was thinking from the timelessness. In fact, what I was thinking was also coming out of the timelessness. So my words, my laughter, my talk, my phrases, my imagination, where was it all coming out of? It was also coming out of. So the source itself was the timelessness. So it's very interesting when we look at the nature of the mind. And in India, we call it the monkey mind, right? Mm-hmm. It's just, it was a term given because you jump from one branch to the other. Mm-hmm. So having this monkey, that is the nature of a mind. And that's how the brain works, actually. In so many seconds, you're able to rotate your thoughts or images so many times. So we can't actually, we can't take that away. We can't go against our nature or against our brain. That is also part of us, right? But if our identification is just with what we are watching, or just what I'm experiencing, that one thing, right? So if I'm imagining of, say, a violent act, a happy act, or whatever, floods in California, right? Okay, I'm imagining that. Now I'm only totally engaged in just thinking of that, feeling it and everything else, versus when I am, and then what's going to happen is the minute I think of California, I may think of another New Orleans, I may think of India, I may think of Bangladesh. So I'm actually jumping, it's the monkey mind. But when I have the presence, when I know that I'm thinking from this deep presence, the timelessness, when this is the backdrop, what happens here changes, it shifts. It is a whole different level of reflecting. So thinking becomes a bit deeper. It's not just a mental act, right? It becomes like a little bit deeper. Does it make sense? It's like now reflecting. So we could be, so that was kind of good news to me because a lot of us have high imaginations. Okay? There's a reason why, so distraction, one may say, is natural, is very natural, and especially now, because the human brain is developing in such different ways, and the mind is also comprehending, grasping images at a much faster speed, right? So we have to use our distractions to create the best possible way. We can't avoid them. We can't say, okay, only do one thing and only do this and stay put. And so being present doesn't mean that you're time-bound. It doesn't mean that. It means that you're in the zone, in the dimension of timelessness. And that is being present. I had a big problem with it because when I would read books earlier on in my life, I would think that, how is this possible? That means I'm never in time. I'm never in the moment. So I would think that maybe I've checked out into some zone and I'm thinking I'm getting enlightened or something like that, or wiser, but maybe I'm not. I'm just some schizophrenic mind developing more and more. So it was not till much later that I'd, of course, experienced the timelessness. And so the message today, and that brings us a lot of relief, right? We can't avoid thinking, because thinking also is good. We need good time for good thinking, right? You need that. So now, if we just basically create the experience of timelessness through our practice, okay? That's just practice, because the more you do it, the better you get at it. And when you do it in the beginning, you start to do deeper meditations, which are taking you into the timelessness. You may only be there for a second or 2 seconds, then back for 2 minutes into thinking, right? Then back 1 minute into. So it's like sometimes it's not one foot forward, one back. Sometimes when you're learning and practicing the timelessness, you can actually take 1 foot forward, 3 back very quickly, which is part of the normal process. It's very, very natural. But that doesn't stop us from practicing and practicing and practicing. Okay? So when we think, if we think with the timelessness, so we've got the time-bound experience which is time-bound, plus the timelessness. It's a whole level of mind and different level of space to create from. So it equals into a whole different qualitative difference in creativity. It's a simple message. I won't complicate it more, but it's really simple, and very profound if we could just increase the state of timelessness and then know how it's working, because understanding makes it so much easier. Otherwise, you're just grasping, you're looking at one thing, time, and then this time, what does that mean and what does this mean? So if we put it together in a package, bring them together, we can fill in that gap. So how does that sound? Okay. Any questions, anything? Or any reflecting? Have you had this experience that you are thinking and then you also are aware of the timelessness? Yeah? So direct experience of how that feels.
But it's like fleeting, like you said.
It's
like seconds.
Yeah. Even if it's fleeting, you know that the timelessness, you're already in that space. Yeah. You're aware of that. So it doesn't matter. It could be 1 second, but it's still there. But 5 minutes timelessness, meditation we do are all into the timelessness. They're all, especially even the blue kriya is 5 minutes. You're within a minute in the zone, in that dimension, right? Now, when you're doing the blue miracle, we can practice it today. It doesn't mean you've stopped thinking. You still may be thinking, right? But we can see that the thoughts are coming, they're switching, you don't get hijacked. So you're aware of the thoughts, but you're aware also of the stillness. So the stillness is where it is. So if you can experience